Every race day starts like this. Every team begins their race day like this too, with a daily dock-out show, where friends, family and fans give the team the best send-off possible as they head out to face the competition. But while this is a great start to the day for the team, the process started much earlier. Getting an AC75 rated to race starts before dawn. Funnily enough, none of the teams are too keen on the idea of us hanging around and filming the process. So instead, I've come to the INEOS base to ask COO Dave Endean to talk us through what's involved in firing up the beast. On a race day, when does the race day start? When's the earliest that a team comes down and starts firing up the beast?
Yeah, it's a good question, Matt. I mean, today, for an example, we had a guy in at 5 o'clock this morning, or 5:30, and his role was to scan the wings, just to make sure that we know exactly what we have on the water that day. And he needs to get that process, the boat needs to be completely still for that to be accurate. So he has the whole boat to himself, so he can look at the wings with a 3D scanning system. And then once he's clear, the next person can come in and start turning the yacht on. That's around about 6:30. Then they start their systems checks, making sure all the data connections are working. Today we had a measurement weigh, a spot check weigh. So we needed to be completely ready, everything off the boat by 8:30 for the measurement committee to do their weighing process. So already quite a lot jammed in that first 3 hours of the day. But even before the sort of early start, the scanner couldn't come in any earlier than that because the night shift wouldn't have finished their foil preparation until 5 o'clock. So it's a 24/7 operation really, just to make sure that everyone has their window of opportunity to do their piece to making sure that the boat's ready to go each day.
When you say, so the guys come in and start to turn the boat on, what does that involve? What are they doing? They're plugging it in? Is it like charging up an electric car? Or
yeah, I mean they basically literally turn it on. So it'll be plugged into some sort of shore power, and they'll just make sure that all the computers are turned on. And there's quite a few different systems on board, and they all talk to each other. So just making sure that works, and then all the sensors are responding the way that they are expected to be. The hydraulic controls are functioning as we would like them to be. They're quite complex boats, so it'd be nice to think you turn it off at night and turn it back on the next day and everything works, but it's not as easy as that. So making sure that all those things work every morning when we turn it on, and giving ourselves the time to respond or react if need be, it's just proven a good idea for us. So that's the process we go through to make sure we're ready to go when we roll out.
It sounds like, conjuring up an image of a bit like a pre-flight checklist on an airliner or something. Is it like that, where you're going through? Do you work methodically through the boat from front to back, or wherever you go, through each system, test, check?
Yeah, exactly that. The boat captain has a sheet that he goes through. He starts at the front, and he'll have someone in one cockpit, and they'll check all the buttons and knobs in one cockpit. They'll move to the next cockpit. So there's 4 cockpits on port, and then 4 cockpits on starboard, and just make sure that there's zero doubt.
And so how long will that process take to do that?
They're getting pretty good at it. I'd say it's probably like a 30 or 35 minute process for them. But while they're doing that, people need to be clear of the yacht because flaps are moving, or foil arms are canting up and down, and rudders moving. So we need to make sure that all hands are off the boat at that stage. So we give them a window of sort of 35 to 45 minutes. If there's an issue, a technician can deal with it on the spot. And then once they're complete with that, then other people will come in and just keep finishing the foil finish or other areas that they do in the morning startups.
So having done the switching on of what other tests, what other procedures do you have to go through, just broad procedures that you have to go through before you put it in? Yeah,
I mean, the communications to the yacht are pretty important. Obviously, we follow the yacht the whole day long. We can't talk to the yacht when it's racing in terms of data, but we get all the information from the yacht. So that link's pretty important for us to monitor the boat throughout its sort of pre-race shakedown when the sailing team are on board. So the comms piece is quite important for us, and there's quite a few different comms streams with regards to data. and it's different from inside the shed to outside the shed to outside the harbour even. So once the rig is connected, that's another step. We want to make sure we've checked that. The boat will get launched, then the engineers come down into the pen and the water, and they'll do mast rotation checks, again checking that the communications from the rig through the yacht are all working. So it's not just inside the shed, it's every step of the way, and then we give it a full sort of, everything's working sign off, and then the guys can bring the sails down, load up the sails, and they're clear to dock out.
And roughly what time of day will that be? I mean, I'm trying to get an idea of how long that whole process would have taken then.
Yeah, typically we roll out about 10:30 or 11 o'clock, depending on which start we are, and we've been docking out anywhere from sort of 12:30 to 1:30, again depending on the start. So we like to roll out about two and a bit hours, or maybe 2 hours before we dock out, and that gives us enough time to do all of our checks, and if there are any issues, respond or react accordingly.
That's a long time, isn't it? I mean, it's fine when it's all working to plan like that, but I guess if you need to make any changes, and you need to make any amendments, or you're looking at a difficult weather forecast, not quite sure which sails to take, I mean, it must be quite difficult to then get in there and change anything.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we've got to the stage where as long as we leave the dock at 100%, we've been pretty reliable on the water so far. The sail decision doesn't normally happen until quite late in the piece, so obviously that's so variable here in Barcelona that we've certainly made sure that we don't put too much pressure on that until we really have to. So the guys will do quite a good job of going out early, as early as they can, doing a couple of hot laps on or near the course, and then we have an opportunity then to spin up head to wind, and we could change mainsail if we wanted to, if the guys weren't comfortable with that choice. And obviously we leave the headsail choice till quite late, so there's still plenty of time for updated weather forecasts and strategy to come together before we make those calls final.
Just going back to, so the boat's come out of the yard, you've put it in the water, you've done the tests, as you said, you've done the rotation tests, you've done those tests you have to go through. Then when the boat leaves the dock from here, when we watch it sort of going out, is that the end of the testing? Is it then just handed over to the sailors, or are you still at that point setting up links, testing things? What's going on between when you leave there and when you get out to the racecourse area?
Yeah, for that period it's typically about the sailors doing their race prep. We'll always monitor the yacht and keep an eye on things, and we have conscious decisions in the team as to whether we would try something before a race, like a control code change or a strategy change, or even just a technique change in the way the guys sail the boat. But typically we wouldn't risk it then. We would do in half an hour after the racing, we'd go out and just try that change then, just to sort of make sure that we haven't introduced an issue on board. So that sort of 90 minutes is really about what they need to get settled on the yacht, make sure it's nothing's changed, and look at the course, look at the wind conditions, and really sort of focus on that sort of 25-minute racing period. And we'll leave all the variable stuff till after the racing. Obviously, if there's a big gain to be had with a change of some sort, we'll try and look at it before the racing and just make sure that the guys are comfortable that it hasn't upset something else. Like I say, the complexity of these boats with all the software now, there's always a risk that you push a software change to the boat and it doesn't quite behave as you saw on the sim or as you'd expect it to on the water. So it's about de-risking things.
It must be quite nerve-wracking a lot of the time, isn't it? I mean, I feel nervous enough about upgrading the software on my laptop.
Yeah.
Let alone a system as complex as this.
Yeah. And the guys are really, I say the engineers and the sailing team are quite good at looking at those changes in the sim. So most of those code changes would happen in the simulator. The guys would then, the engineers would be able to see, yes, that change is working as we expected, and we can't see any obvious side effects. And then the sailing team would come on and say, yeah, we understand how that change is working. We understand the impact it's having. And sometimes it'll flush out a bug or two in the sim, which is really valuable. But there's always, every now and then, it'll be a timing difference that that sort of shows up on the water that we weren't expecting. So we're pretty good at sort of flushing that stuff out in the sim, but there's always the risk of it creeping onto the water.
So by the time you see the boats heading out around the end of the harbour and making their way to the start area, the chances are that most of those teams will have already put in a 6-hour shift just to get their AC75s to this point. In the next episode, we'll take a look at what happens after the racing for the night shift, because even then, the beast doesn't sleep.
A sustainable future. Yanmar.